guess where we are today? Today, I've been invited, you've been invited. We're going to be walking through the doors of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital here in Memphis, Tennessee. My name is David. Welcome to church visit number 36 of 52 churches in 52 weeks, a spiritual adventure that was founded on faith, curiosity, and an appreciation for stories. So obviously with this third round, we've been doing our fundraiser with St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Right now, we're at about $24,000. Our goal by the 52nd and final church is to have hit $52,000. And while doing this current fundraiser, this spiritual project, I had some people reach out from St. Jude to assist, to take a look inside and take a tour. So I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. So this is not going to be a traditional house of worship type of visit, but it still has the same heart. It still has the same spirit, because it is that common mission of sharing faith, sharing hope, sharing any type of just love, courageous love. And it's just a testament to the power of healing, to selfless giving, especially for you as a viewer who have helped as a community with this channel to give a chance, to give hope to families and children that are going through the worst of times. So with St. Jude, it was founded in 1962 by Danny Thomas. He was an actor, and he was struggling at the time in the Detroit, Michigan area. So he prayed in front of this St. Jude, patron of Saint of Lost Causes. And he kind of promised where his vision, if he could be able, would be to help out those that were less fortunate, especially with children. And as his career started to take off, that prayer, that vow, he held on to. And as a result, look at this. This whole area right now would have been nothing if it wasn't for this prayer and this vow that he made. So to me right now, it's to see this type of selfless giving, and not just through this vision and this prayer, but for everyone that has contributed to make this a reality, is absolutely mind-blowing to me. And with our channel to explore these different church communities, it aligns so much with how we can all be good Samaritans, how we can all help our neighbors. So I'm going to be walking inside here in just a little bit. And, with this fundraiser, I invite you to join with that selfless giving to make a difference, because when faith, love, generosity, when that all combines, miracles can happen. So I'm going to meet my contact here in a little bit. I'll share what I learned, what I took away, and I'll be back in a little bit to share much more. This will not come as a surprise, but I cannot say enough good things about this visit. And I'm kind of worried even doing this part of the video where it's like just the words and a recap is just not going to do justice to the amazing work that's going on here at St. Jude. I was there for roughly 4 to 5 hours, and it was like a blink of an eye and it was over. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that I took from this visit is St. Jude, it is not just a hospital. It is a place of hope, a place where families who are going through the darkest stretch of their lives, to have a child going through a catastrophic disease, and instead they are met with light, with love, and just a promise that they do not need to walk this dark path alone. And what I learned is it is a deep, deep community. And every child, they receive world-class treatment. No family ever gets a bill. And it's due to that generosity, that kind of vision that doesn't just happen anywhere. It has to start with a dream. And that dream all started with one man, that one man, Danny Thomas. So you may be wondering, what is the story with this prayer? And especially, what was the background behind everything? Well, Danny Thomas, he was born in Michigan to Lebanese Catholic parents. And like many entertainers, he struggled a lot early on. From what I read inside the Pavilion, this prayer occurred in November 1937 when Danny Thomas was at his absolute lowest. His wife had just given birth to their first child, and he needed $70 to get her and the baby out of the hospital, and he only had $10. Desperate, uncertain of his future, he made a visit to the Detroit neighborhood church nearby, and they had this statue of St. Jude Thaddeus, the patron saint of hopeless causes. And the basic premise of the prayer was, help me find my way in life, and I will build you a shrine. Shortly after that, he attends Mass. He tithes $7 of the $10 in his pocket to the collection plate. And he's basically looking for a sign. That sign happens the very next day when he gets a gig for a radio commercial that will pay him $75. He gets his wife and his newborn baby out of the hospital. He starts landing more and more acting and comedy gigs, and his star soon starts to rise. And over the next decade, he becomes a much more famous Hollywood celebrity, and his career really takes off in the 1950s as he's the lead role in a popular TV sitcom that first is called Make Room for Daddy, that eventually is renamed to The Danny Thomas Show. He was awarded 3 Emmy Awards that they actually have inside the Pavilion that you can see for yourself. But despite all this Hollywood success, this promise, this vow, this prayer to God in front of this St. Jude Thaddeus statue just always stuck with him. And in the 1950s, he began to lay the groundwork for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. One thing that I read inside is he kind of took on the role of a proud beggar, to asking people from his Lebanese and Syrian communities to kind of be the first donators to make this dream a reality. And over the course of this time, I was so confused looking at some of the earlier pictures because the hospital was not very big early on, like compared to what it is nowadays. The original hospital that opened in 1962, they unveiled the St. Jude statue in front of it, just this anchor, this vow that he had, so many years earlier, and it was in the shape of a star. And I was told later on that the star was a representation of the Star of David, and we kind of joked now St. Jude, it's an entire constellation at this point. One thing that I was wondering was why Memphis, of all places? And I learned there's a very impactful and just cutting event that happened. So for Danny Thomas, he read this newspaper article about an 8-year-old African-American boy who was on his bicycle and he was struck by a white driver in Mississippi. Obviously feeling horrible, the driver picked up the boy and rushed him to the nearest hospital, but was turned away. So he took him to a second hospital and again turned away. The boy died, all because of segregation. And this tragedy deeply impacted Danny Thomas to the point for years he carried a clipping of this newspaper article in his wallet just to serve as a reminder why St. Jude needed to exist. So when it came time to choosing a location for where St. Jude would be, he knew it needed to be in the American South. He knew it needed to be centrally placed in the country so anyone could travel to it. He also knew that, especially in this region in the South, there was no major children's hospital. And not only that, he wanted to make sure that this was going to be the first fully integrated hospital in the region. So his belief was just absolutely radical at the time. But he figured no child, regardless of race, creed, or finances, should ever be denied medical care. From the beginning, St. Jude was just too big for one man. So Danny Thomas had a number of Hollywood connections that stepped up to help out. One of the most surprising celebrity contributions came from Elvis. Here's a story. So in 1964, Elvis, he wanted to raise funds for St. Jude, and he sold a presidential yacht. So the USS Potomac, which was also nicknamed as the Floating White House or the White House on Water, it was used during President Franklin D. Roosevelt's tenure as president. And after he sold his yacht, it bounced between a number of owners until it finally landed in the hands of a yacht broker that wanted to use it for charity. So he sold it to Elvis for $55,000. They even have a check online on this. And it wasn't for himself, but it was going to be used for Danny Thomas, for St. Jude, not necessarily for just the funds, but also just to have some major awareness, in mainstream media. So they were able to raise $75,000 by selling this yacht. That was a sizable donation at that point. And through the years, other celebrities got involved. Frank Sinatra was one of Danny Thomas's closest friends, so he was an early donor. Sammy Davis Jr. had some benefit performances. And then you also have celebrities like Bob Hope, and more recently, like Robin Williams, Michael Strahan, Jennifer Aniston. They've all played a part in some of the celebrity campaigns. One of the most interesting auctions that my contact told me about it's called Inspiration 4. It was a space mission in 2021. So it was a private space flight that raised a record-breaking $243 million. It was headed by a billionaire CEO. I think his name was Jared Isaacman. And he personally donated $100 million from himself. And I guess there was a vote for one of the passenger seats. And it was a St. Jude cancer survivor. I think her name was Haley Arsenault, if I'm saying that correctly. I'm probably not. And she became the youngest American to go into space. So yeah, St. Jude, it's not always just one man like with Danny Thomas, but over the years, celebrities, donors, just everyday people have stepped up just to keep this dream alive. Through a number of conversations that I was having, I learned that St. Jude, it doesn't feel like a hospital. It's a community. It's a culture. I was sharing some interesting church stories, how I had been to a biker church, with all these Harley Davidson kind of guys, or a trucker church. And I learned that those churches, very niche congregations, but it was because they were kind of speaking their own language. And to a very differing degree, St. Jude is very similar in that respect. Because like if you have ever worked retail, or maybe you've ever been on a sports team where you are locked in with your teammates or your coworkers, like there is a certain bond that forms doing that. And with St. Jude, the patients, the doctors, the researchers, the staff members, they even have a K cafe where they all will eat together. This vision that Danny Thomas had that will foster personal relationships to kind of keep everything in scope to fight for the same cause. Like that's huge. They even have like recreational spaces, playgrounds, bright artwork. They want everything to be normal for people. They even have a school on site. So like if children are going through some of these treatments, like they want to still give that hope. They don't want these students to fall behind because of their treatment. So again, just another area of normalcy. Even for high school patients, they'll hold prom. So one question I had, being 52 churches in 52 weeks, does St. Jude have like a church service or a chapel or some type of reflection space? And sure enough, there is, especially for visitors. So I was invited to the Danny Thomas ALSAC Pavilion. This pavilion pays tribute to Danny Thomas's Lebanese heritage and also the hospital's mission, its history, and just a number of other things that makes St. Jude and its legacy so strong. So when we walked in, you could tell just straight towards the back, there was this hallway for an interfaith chapel for quiet reflection. So it didn't matter if you were Christian, Jewish, Muslim, any type of faith was welcome inside. And at the very end of the wall was this wooden carving of the Last Supper, absolutely gigantic. So the story I was told about this is Danny Thomas, he was in California, he was driving around, and he came across just this amazing sculptor. I want to say his name is William Brent. And Danny Thomas, he was just so impressed that he requested if this sculptor could make him this wooden carving. And the sculptor, like, he didn't have time. He had all these other projects, and he didn't know who Danny Thomas was. Well, Danny Thomas, he was a bargainer, so he starts, kind of offering different type of amounts, and he eventually gets up to $50,000 so he could have this wooden carving of the Last Supper in his dining room. So the wooden carving, it was done, and then when Danny Thomas passed away, his family donated this wooden carving to the pavilion at St. Jude's. And eventually, when the sculptor kind of learned about this, and after Danny Thomas's death, he started to donate to St. Jude, just kind of make things full circle after everything. So the chapel, it's open to all patients, all families, all staff, regardless of religious background. Stained glass windows try to pay homage to everyone. So there's portraits or stained glass windows of Moses, of St. Jude, and also with Danny Thomas with some children. So, but yeah, it's a place of reflection, of prayer. It's a place to serve as comfort. And it's also been a place for celebration. So in the past, there were two patients who were both being treated for cancer. They fell in love, and eventually they decided to get married inside this chapel, reflections place, whatever you want to call it. So absolutely beautiful. It just reinforced the idea that faith and healing, they're intertwined beyond any type of denomination or faith background. Before we wrap up, I want to give a special thanks to Jeremy, Shanice, and Vilma for showing me around, answering my questions, and just all the conversation. Because this visit changed me. And as I mentioned earlier, one thought is like this doesn't act like a hospital. It's much more than that. It's a community, it's a culture. It is like this warm embrace for people that are going through the absolute worst. So it's not just about treatment, but it is about finding a cure. And it reminded me where hope is kind of the foundation that's going on here. St. Jude, it's proof of coming together, giving selflessly when you believe that something is bigger than ourselves. I think at Danny Thomas, one thing that I heard from him is success has nothing to do with what you gain in life or what you accomplish for yourself. It's what you do for others. So if you feel inspired by this story, I invite you to be a part of this. If you have the means, donate $5, $2, $52, whatever you can do to lift up others. And I hope with this third round of 52 churches in 52 weeks, like we have a long way to go if we're going to hit $52,000. Every little bit counts. And even if we don't hit our goal, we've still done a ton as a community to help out this amazing cause. Because at St. Jude, despite the circumstances, despite the darkness, hope lives on.